Hi, my name is Catherine Tubb and I'm a Senior Investment Analyst here at Planet Tracker in the Textiles team. I want to introduce our latest briefing paper called Threadbare Data, where we look at how poor environmental disclosure in the textile wet processing companies are preventing investors from properly pricing ESG risks and opportunities. At Planet Tracker, we have been focusing on the wet processing part of textile production, whose heavy environmental footprint represents a significant risk for investors exposed to this sector. In our previous report, Will Fashion Die Another Day, we focused on water, linking factory location water risk of wet processing companies to the investors behind them. The aim of this report is to understand how companies in the wet processing universe disclose environmental metrics and assess, manage, and measure their use of greenhouse gas emissions, water, and chemicals. In this briefing paper, we took the Planet Tracker equity universe of 230 companies with wet processing activities and analysed their environmental disclosure. We defined 37 metrics, 19 quantitative and 18 qualitative, and collected data for each of these companies across those metrics, more than 8,500 data points. We then used this disclosure to calculate an environmental disclosure score out of 10 for each of the 230 companies. Our findings were bleak. 10% of companies disclosed no environmental policies or data at all, while more than 70% of companies had a disclosure score of less than 2 out of 10. And while only 7 companies had a disclosure score of over 5, the maximum disclosure score was 7 out of 10, which was for LVMH, a well-capitalized and publicly traded large fashion company. We came away with other key findings. First, only a minority of companies disclose environmental policies, and most of them don't disclose the data required to assess their performance properly. For example, many of the companies that we know are exposed to water risk do not publicly disclose what they are doing to mitigate that risk. Second, even disclosure around a more mature metric like greenhouse gas emissions is inconsistently reported and challenging to extract from company literature. This indicates it's hard for financial analysts and investors alike to understand the environmental risk embedded properly. And third, our analysis shows that companies operating facilities in high water risk areas provide the poorest environmental disclosures, compounding risks for investors. Based on the limited data we were able to collect, we did calculate that larger entities, by revenue, generally have better environmental disclosure metrics than smaller ones, which of course may be expected. Many of the companies in the universe are suppliers to many of the larger textile, clothing, and apparel brands. And while we're seeing increasing investor pressure on brands, we believe investors do need to focus on the key wet processing suppliers. Poor disclosures significantly impair the ability of investors to assess the wet processing companies, not only against their ESG investing principles, but also against ongoing business risk. If wet processors are failing to disclose environmental data because they are not collecting it, then they risk losing business from brands that are stepping up in their requirement for environmental data from their suppliers. In addition, mismanagement can result in fines or even production closures, leading to increasing financial risk, such as from lower cash flows. Our analysis of investor holdings showed that family offices and individual entrepreneurs are particularly exposed, since on average they hold companies with the poorer disclosure scores. Planet Tracker recommends that investors take the following actions. There's a clear need for investors, governments, and regulators to act together to acquire a unified, consistent, standardized global framework for reporting environmental data. And we welcome efforts by the IFRS Foundation and others who are working together to create a global sustainability reporting framework. We also suggest investors use Planet Tracker's disclosure score in assessing environmental risks with wet processing companies, as well as pressurizing companies to radically improve environmental transparency and related financial efficiencies. We look forward to discussing our report with you further. Thank you.